welcome back to Proper FREEcon. I'm Troy Simon, joined as always by my partner in FREEcon, the man who can smell a missing scope gap from 3 bid tabs away. He's our very own human contingency plan, the only man I know who can turn a napkin sketch from a 5th grader into a cost narrative before his coffee gets cold. He's part estimator, folks, part strategist, part therapist. He puts the pre and pre-construction, the con and confidence, and please don't make me price that twice in every VE meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, our very own Professor Trey Darnell. Trey, good to have you this morning.
Well, I don't even know if I can take that title because we have Mike on the call. I am the student.
The intro to you, I'm going to get a little bit bigger and bigger every week. I'm just having a lot of fun with that. Although that might have been a good one for Mike too. But
I agree.
Yeah, good to see you here, Mike.
Good to see you too. Yeah, that was a pretty epic intro. One of the best I think I've ever heard.
Well, there's a word we've been just kicking around a lot lately. Title of our episode today is it's FREEcon. It's pre-construction for free, and it's that unpaid estimates, the early budgets, the multiple design iterations. Can you just take a quick look at this? Value engineering exercises, option comparisons, all that stuff, right? Trade partner outreach. The work, it's incredibly valuable, but it's a lot of time for those teams, and it's often treated like it's free. Today, we're going to maybe hope to unpack that a little bit with your help. Talk a little bit about why does FREEcon happen? Why, where does it create problems? When is it strategic? Maybe how do we start helping the industry put the right value on pre-construction? Because even if you can't put a dollar value on it, maybe there's a mindset value that we need to apply to that. So we figured we brought you in because you've lived it, right? You've sat in that estimator seat, and now you're the CTO of Ediphi. Spent your career kind of helping build technology in pre-con time. So thanks for coming on and coming on the show.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Yeah, I've got a 20-year career fighting those battles in pre-construction, trying to get deals on the ground, both as an operations person and as a pre-construction professional. And so, I've lived a lot of pain. And, we want people to, our users, we want to empower them to get involved with the customers early on. That's actually a good thing to add value early on. But when you get involved early on, that's where FREEcon becomes a thing.
Yeah, I think that's where this is going to be a really good conversation. Just from your 20 years of experience in the pre-con space doing estimating. And I'm really excited to kind of hear your perspective, both from the estimating side and then I'll be on the software side, and kind of how those things how they align, how they differ, what's kind of changed your perspectives and opinions on software as you've built the software, right? From the ground up. So just like the mind of an estimator and the mind of now a CTO, and how those things differ a bit, or maybe how they line up. But before we get to that, I like to kind of throw in a little pre-con punchline on the front end just to loosen things up a little bit. Could be sarcastic, just humor worthy, whatever else. And so I don't have I have a laundry list of these, but this is just more of a general statement. So pre-construction is the art of telling people maybe with a spreadsheet. There it is.
It's our dad joke of the week, and we have to tell them.
That's efficiency, because I just gave you the punchline. We're trying to do the same thing in pre-con. Let's give the punchline, explain the story, right? So we're doing the same stuff. So there you go. You're welcome.
Well, it's kind of funny, because people talk about, well, is it about accuracy? And because the target changes, meaning what the dollar value is, because the program changes of what the customer is trying to achieve, or our client's customer is trying to achieve, that it's really a moving target, and it's more about explaining the why or telling the cost story. And we're trying to provide those tools that help tell the cost story, right? It's that transparency that helps facilitate faster decision-making.
Absolutely. So let's set the table a little bit. You've kind of jumped in a little bit on some of your background in the construction space, doing pre-con. So you're a veteran estimator, now a CTO at Ediphi. If they told all the college kids that you go from estimator to co-founder on one of the best new pre-con solutions on the market today, I think we can solve all the pre-con labor shortages problems pretty fast, like the issues pretty fast, right? Because we're doing some stuff going upstream in education too, right? To help set that table earlier. But give us kind of like just some quick career things, like, you know, you got a brief overview, like where you started, how long you've been in the field, what eventually pulled you toward the technology side, kind of that ultimately led to you being the CTO here at Ediphi.
Yeah, well, let me just give you the foundation of what has guided me from day one of my career. There's two real main things, which is do what you love and work with people you respect. And in my opinion, whenever I focused on that, which has been sort of a guiding principles for me, the rest all kind of fall into place and have put me on the journey that I'm on. Doing things that I love is solving complex projects and complex problems. And that's what got me into pre-con on big work. And it's just like the more complicated, the more challenging, the more I enjoyed it and was always looking for more challenge. But also being on those complicated projects made it very obvious that the tools that the professionals that plan the built world are using do not give them what they need. And so that grew into a mission and a passion for me to focus on that. And really the technology that is now Ediphi started in 2017. And sort of a long journey that got us to where we are now, and in our founding with myself partnering up with Dustin back in 2023. That has been my guiding principle to really help who I was, the user that I was, and give them the tools that they finally need to successfully plan work and get it in the ground.
And that's what I love about like having you on for this specific topic is like you understand the actual work behind the estimate. A lot of people outside of pre-con, they just see a number. They see a PDF or a spreadsheet. You see a budget update. You see the cost story behind it. Because there's just a ton of stuff that goes in that number. It's effort, judgment, risk, assumptions, trade partner input, experience, right? So the topic today is FREEcon, right? So to me, FREEcons, it's when a builder is asked to provide meaningful pre-con services without clear commitment, clear compensation, or even boundaries around what's being delivered, right? So it could look like early budgets, like multiple rounds of pricing, look like design feedback. It can even look like just help us get through this board meeting, right? You're just going to solve the owner's problem before there's any agreement that you're the partner who gets to build it.
To be fair, it's probably not a malicious thing, right? I mean, owners and developers they're trying to figure out if a project's viable. Architects, they're trying to make design decisions. Builders are trying to win work. Everybody's operating, you know, inside this system that they inherited. But, you know, I'm not sure the system was ultimately designed with any of these parties in mind. It just sort of evolved that way. What do you say, Mike?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a changing paradigm. I mean, I come from a family in construction. It was one of the things that motivated me to get into construction was driving into Boston with my grandfather, with my father, and them talking about buildings that they worked on. And then, you know, the first building that I worked on, a high rise in Boston, was right next to one that my grandfather worked on as a Boston carpenter foreman. And his name is signed on the highest beam of that, and my name signed on the highest beam of the one next to it. Like, you know, that tangible result on the skyline is impactful to me. But, you know, back when my father and grandfather were doing work in construction, it was a different way of delivering the project. And that is not the way anymore, because it's really naturally cyclical on how pre-con happens now. What I mean by that is developer secures a parcel of land, or it may be an institution that already has, you know, that land or that asset, and they want to do an improvement on it. We are here to pick up from that starting point and to guide them through that entire process. A lot of tools aren't really set up to pick up from the very beginning and go through to the entire ending process. And it's naturally iterative now in that, like, I was often the bearer of bad news where the developer would get a parcel of land secured and they'd spend all this money with designers and a design team, and then they'd give it to me to price it, and I just ruin everyone's day. And I'm the bad guy sitting in the OAC meeting. I've just been the bad guy for like decades now, you know?
Yeah.
Right. And I hated being the bad guy. Like, I was there to try to add value. I was there to try to predict that something wasn't going to go right when they try to ink the deal, to give them that predictability. But it often counted as bad news, and they would all have to go back to the drawing board, and then it would be several months, and I'd get a new set of documents, and then I'd ruin their day again. And so what we're trying to do is get the estimator's voice, the pre-construction professional's voice in the process as soon as possible, so that that guidance and that predictability can be provided to all the stakeholders, and spin those iterative cycles that are super painful, that like, you know, burn up all this time and have all this carry cost risk. Spin that faster and get to like a financially viable solution on how to build the project sooner. And that, in my opinion, is how we get more deals in the ground faster and empower our users to add value to the process.
Actually, I love the way you said that, because, you know, there's times like pre-con can be charged to overhead, can be charged to projects, but a lot of times it's overhead. At least that's what I've seen. But what you're saying is the value, like if we can shift the value from to the pre-con team, we say like people are your process, or people are your value, right? Process is how you deliver. Tech is a better bridge, or it can be a bridge. So if you shift the value, does that gradually change this mindset of, well, pre-con shouldn't be free? And so that's kind of where, like, from your time as an estimator, why does FREEcon happen? Like, why do builders give away so much pre-construction work?
Well, I guess I'll give it to you anecdotally. I got a phone call from a client once that couldn't tell me what parcel of land it was, but it was like a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot footprint in the city, and they wanted to put a hotel on it. And you know, they were like, "Hey, I think that this is going to be like 420 a square foot, right?" Because that's what they were thinking hotel was back then. But the reality is like, let me do a quick estimate for you, actually, and that's using our tools, where I was able to scaffold a very quick estimate with that small postage stamp site and fill it with the right unit counts that they wanted and get to the height of it. Then it was like $900 a square foot, right? Because like when you actually do that math out and don't just use those price per square foot answers, like they're like, well, why is that? Well, let me tell you why. You have a core that goes through the center of the building that is distributed over a way smaller gross square footage, and your floor to skin ratio, meaning how much of your facade in relation to your square footage of your building, is nearly 100%. Every dollar you add to the facade adds to a cost per square foot of your building. Like, those are the kinds of things that you need to do to provide the predictability. And I'm grateful that I was able to do that from a phone call. I'm grateful that that person trusted me to get my advice early on. And me doing that quickly was FREEcon. But that's the kind of FREEcon that develops a relationship with a customer that trusts me, that will give him him or she the predictability they need to plan out that job and do a pro forma and get the thing in the ground. And so, yeah, I'm willing to invest my time, so long as it's not like, so long as I have the tools to do it quickly, to foster that relationship and know that there's profitability on the end of it.
Yeah, I think the quick pricing exercises are one example, right? But then you get into like more defined scope, and then it becomes a little bit more of a investigation of, well, what's on the drawings and how do we get these quantities into the scope or into my estimate, and then also like, you know, some of it's predictive intent. It's not, if it's not defined scope, it's predictive intent. What else is in this building? Because I've done something like this in the past, I'm going to put this in here too. When it gets really kind of untangled, that ball of yarn, that's where I think FREEcon can become a little bit challenging, because you spend more time trying to put those things in, right? But I think I actually agree with this concept of, I mean, you look at, Troy and I talked about this yesterday. When you reach out to an HVAC guy to come, you know, tune up or repair your HVAC unit, right, on your house, or if you need to get a new one put in, they'll come give you a free estimate most often, right? I think one of the differences here in some cases, now early on is one thing, but I was saying as things get more defined is, this isn't just price my HVAC unit, it's price my whole building, that has everything in the building, like that has to have some dollar allocation to it, right? And then I need to help my client understand the cost per square foot, cost per unit, cost per key, cost per whatever, so they can make an informed financial decision and understand their IRR, right? So I just think it gets really complex really fast after those first initial, you know, pricing exercises that may be a little more conceptual, but you can use historical data, like you said, and the tool that actually quickly like ramp that up and get that number. So I don't think it's a matter of should FREEcon exist. I think there's value in providing those services, to your point, especially early on. But at some point, the rent becomes due.
It can get abusive. It's the boomerang.
Yeah,
It's the boomerang.
It's got to feel frustrating, probably, when you have the relationship, it's probably much easier. Like you have a client that you've been working with several times. They call you, you can give them a price because there's that trust established. But is it different, Mike? Like if it's maybe a first time or becomes sort of like a show me how smart you are, show me how kind of responsive you can be on this, show me how much effort you'll put in, almost like a tryout, right? And then maybe we'll pick you. Is that tension ever there? And then
Yeah.
it feels like what could create over time is the better you get at sort of being there doing this for free. It's like, oh, we'll go ask Mike. He'll check it out for us, and they may or may not be serious intent to build a project. I mean, there's all kind of things. It's one thing if you have a tool like Ediphi, where we can do this quickly. But there's a lot of companies out there that are doing it old school, and they're probably running through this frustration exercise over and over again. And all they're doing is subsidizing the owner's decision making process.
That's such an interesting way of saying it, Troy. Yeah, I mean, because like where the pain really starts to get inflicted is when it keeps boomeranging back, and there's just these endless well of questions that just never runs dry. Of what if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do this? What if we do that? And what if we delete a floor of a building impacts so many things. And if you just have an estimate with a bunch of flat lines, you got to like think about the number of stairs goes down, all the piping that goes vertical through the building changes, the number of this, that, all my tile has to be updated. Like so many things you got to remember, and you're not going to remember it all. You're going to make mistakes. You send it out after weeks of working on it. And then they ask, what if we delete 2 floors? And you're like, and it just keeps happening and happening and happening. And you almost get like punished for your speed because like, oh, wow, they can answer questions quick. Sweet. And, and that starts burning all your time and burning all your bottom line because like now you're just doing more and more FREEcon. And it's like, okay, well, what do? You say, no, we're only going to do 1 round of questions, but then you're not adding the value. Or is it's like, no, let's actually create a way where you can delete a floor and update your estimate with a click, and it can happen in a meeting, not months. And then it's like, okay, no, actually, I do want to add value. I do want to answer these questions. I guess we are subsidizing the decision-making of the owner, but like someone's got to facilitate the decision-making process. Like the first job I was the lead on, it was a $100 million project, took 18 months to build, and it was 30 months in pre-con. So all this tech has been going to shave days off an 18-month schedule, and there's 30 months of pain before. We exist to reduce the 30. And how do you reduce the 30? Facilitate decision-making, right? And that's what reduces that FREEcon burden while still adding value.
I think I know what we say like what happens when we assume things. I won't finish the statement, right? But like part of the thought process here is if we can bring more thoughtful conversations up to the front and not have those drag out. So you mentioned the example of what happens if you take off 2 floors, right? Or if you already have some understanding that they get more revenue for a specific unit type or something like that, you can go ahead and hedge your bets and go in with additional options that could potentially expedite some of that decision-making, right? Or at least give more thoughtful things to chew on. Because the hope is, you're right. Like, how do we reduce that pre-con time frame? We have all these milestones in construction. Do we need all these milestones? The reality is, if we brought more thoughtful conversation up front and we maybe had 3 milestones instead of 10, what could we get done in 6 months with 3 milestones and more impactful conversations? Again, with the tool supporting that, because really what you're speaking to is like, that's kind of where FREEcon becomes dangerous, right? That it just keeps swinging back around and swinging back around. And I got to do this whole thing over again. And there was my buddy Preston at Advancing Pre-Con, they gave a presentation and they kind of gave a higher level presentation of exactly the things we talk about. So the example, and we want to have them on here too, but like the example is, we price this thing and the cost goes up here, but the target's down here. And then we cut everything. Yeah. And then we do this again and we make this big sawtooth thing, right? But there's opportunities to make smaller jumps, right? And address the scope in some cases earlier on that you need to, and then foundations, concrete, right? That kind of stuff. Like address things where you need to, and then kind of build on that conversation further along. You can be conceptual with some things early on, right? But not everything.
Well, that's right. You want to move as far to the left as possible. You're right. Instead of dragging on all of these like questions about how to get the deal to pencil out, you want to work them out as early as possible, right? And that's what we're trying to empower people to do. And you're right. That means you're operating at a conceptual level, but you want tools that don't just treat concrete as $60 a square foot, but can actually scaffold together the line items that you typically see, the slab on metal deck, the concrete columns, a certain pounds per square foot of rebar inside those slabs that scaffold together some meaningful assumptions based on your prior knowledge, so that when you do get more advanced design, like you've already kind of argued over the pounds per square foot in the slab. And when the price is now 65 a square foot, you have something defensible where you're like, hold on, we said a pound per square foot in the slab already that we thought was enough. Now you're saying a pound and a half. Of course, concrete's up. Versus if it's just up and they're like, well, what did you assume? Money. I put money on concrete. Like it's not defensible. So, and you need it to be defensible in order to like move the process along. So you're right, Trey, like go far to the left, answer all those questions as soon as possible, answer them in meetings, not months. And that's how you get the 30 months down.
I love that. Answer them in meetings, not months.
Yeah, I mean, because the builders, they care. They want to help. They want to solve the problems. They want to be a good partner, and they just don't want to get punished for being too generous with their expertise. And that's where the tools like Mike's describing and what we talk about all the time can really help speed that process up. So they can do good by their client, but also do good by themselves. So that's always a good thing.
I think you're going to acknowledge too that the intro on a pre-construction professional on a project is always going to have some amount of the tip of it is free, right? And if you can demonstrate value faster, then you can have that cost conversation sooner to start recovering. Now,
That's right.
We often would look at it like if you recover 50% of your total pre-construction costs, that's great. That's like a success. And the other 50% like comes right out of the bottom line. And the way it's recovered is you might actually sign a pre-construction services agreement. You might prove you're so dang valuable, they're willing to sign it. One thing I'll say about a pre-construction services agreement, which, they pay you money to do your work, is that you always go over it and then you don't bill them for the overage, right? So there's that. And then there's also, okay, you may not want to force that conversation yet, but you're going to do such a dang good job in pre-con that that job's going to go and you're going to take the costs and put them on the job. Right? But just notice what's happening here. Someone's paying for it. It's either us or it's the owner. Like there is a chunk of cost called pre-con and it is big right now and people have to bear it and it gets spread someplace, comes out of someone's bottom line.
Yeah.
And if you shrink that down, it's an easier thing for all parties involved. Right. And that's what we're here for, to shrink that down in time and to shrink that down in effort, while still answering all the questions required to move it along.
Yeah, I love you can recoup the cost down the road. I guess that's another insight where maybe you spend it, but you do such a good job you can recoup it. I think that one of the challenges and how you're like trying to align with folks early on is, unless I'm not suggesting the conversation always has to be had, but unless a conversation's had around like the value you're providing, they may not know what they're getting. Right? We say like price is only a barrier to the degree the value that you're getting. If you don't know what you're getting, how do you know what to pay for it? Right.
Well, yeah, that's that clarity of, yeah.
How much are those the services agreements? Are they readily accepted? Where, do owners understand any value in that of doing it? Do they resist it? Is it more of a why would I pay you before I know you're my builder situation?
Yeah, sure. All of that tension. Yeah. I mean, when you have better relationships with people or on more complicated projects, like they're willing, like, and oftentimes they'll even be paying a cost consultant as well. And you're going to be like cost checking your number against the cost consultant and doing reconciliations and everything. So they're already, certain developers and institutions are already set up to know that there's a cost to get the project right before you break ground. Other people that you have a new relationship with, there's way more to prove, right? And that's when it can get real tricky. And that's when you make this like business decision. Do I force the pay me now? Or do we go through this and build trust so that the job's going to go and I'll recoup it then. And that's a business decision that's hard to make, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mike, talk to us about like the trade partner piece of this. We've talked to so many different GCs in the last like 3 years. So like some companies are, early on, they're just kind of trying to grab book something together, a number, whatever else, based off some spreadsheets. Some are reaching out to trade partners, or some, all they do is reach out to trade partners, say, hey, what's the number, put on the bid sheet, and let's roll. Right. So like, talk to us a little about the trade partner fatigue and kind of how you see opportunity to improve some of that in this pre-con process.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I certainly get the value of that, of like, well, let me go out to the street and ask them what they think. But the problem is with that is that if you send napkin sketch level stuff out to all your subs, they're going to be like, talk to me when this thing's real. And they'll give you a flyer, maybe if you have a good relationship with them, when what I call flyers, like a 1-pager, it's like me do concrete 10 million, like that kind of thing. And you're like, what does that mean? I don't even know, dude. Okay, you're going to do the concrete, right? And you're just like setting yourself up for pain as the plans get more detailed and then they actually price it. So I don't want to get them involved then, because what you're doing is you're creating what's called the PETA Factor, which is a pain in the you can figure it out factor, where like the more you subject the vendor community or the sub community to those boomerangs of questions, the PETA factor grows and it gets priced in the job. I'm telling you, it gets priced in the job, right? It's like, if you make them go through all those rounds, then it's going to inflate their price. And yet if you scope, clarity drives price down. Scope, mystery drives price up. And actually, some of the best subs out there actually know how to operate in mystery and monetize it, right? So you want to reduce mystery and you want to drive scope clarity, and that's where get scope clarity as early as possible drives costs down, reduces PETA factor, right? And that means you need something that is conceptual and detailed estimate in the same platform. And you can actually like scaffold estimates quickly with some level of detail that makes it defensible.
If you're asking for a budget, and the GC just automatically jumps to trade partners for help. I mean, sometimes they're drawing, sometimes there's not. Sometimes a project real, sometimes it's a fishing expedition or whatever. But and maybe the trade partner is getting called by other GCs for the similar project. There's got to be a lot of fatigue that happens on their end on these early projects. And Trey talked about it. I think it was in episode 1 about the core context here. When a GC doesn't have good historical cost data, they have no choice but to go to trade partners early. They don't have that anchor. They can't build any early credibility from their own knowledge base because the knowledge isn't organized in a way that they can actually use it. So every budget request becomes this trade partner outreach exercise, even when design isn't really ready to be priced. And I think, can that erode the relationships there, Mike, in your experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It can erode the relationships. So like, I feel like for pre-construction, you gotta drive clarity, right? And that's where success and failure is like driving that clarity. And if you're just doing the rip and read of their proposals, then, you're not driving clarity. You're just sort of kicking the can on that, resolving that mystery. And you really want to resolve that up front. And I don't know how you do it without historical data at your fingertips. I really don't. Because like if you look at, all the milestones of a project before it breaks ground, like cost just tends to go up. Like it does, right? Well, there's 2 reasons why. One is the subcontractor community. The other is the design team and scope creep. And both of those need to be defended downward in order to have a deal not bust. And so like defended downward is let me give you one quick example of a project that I did. The steel on the job wound up going like through the roof, and the steel number went through the roof, and then, what's going on with your steel guys? And yeah, I can go back to them and be like, hey, look, in the last jobs like this, you were 4,200 a ton, and now you're at 4,600 a ton. What's that all about? But on the flip side, I can go back to the engineer and be like, hey, on other projects of like kind, it was 9 pounds a square foot of steel. You're sitting in here at 11, like what's going on? And then you dig in further, and it's like the column base plates are 4 inches thick and 4 foot by 8 foot. Like, why are your column base plates so friggin' gigantic? That's more than normal. Like, you've got to be able to defend on both sides. If you're truly an advocate for your customer, our client's customer, like if you're truly an advocate for them, then you've got to be able to defend both the scope creep and the opportunistic pricing of the subcontractors, right? To drive it towards more what it should be. I don't know how you do that without data. I really don't, right? I guess you could just yell at people, which that's kind of a thing that we've done in construction for a while. I don't find that to be super effective. It's already adversarial enough with all the stakeholders. Like, we want to make it less adversarial, you know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, first impressions are the most important. Definitely don't want to start yelling at people.
I mean, but like, I don't think I've been on any project where there wasn't at least one person in the room where like there was some tension, you know? Big projects with the owner, the owner's rep, the design team, the consultants, us at the table. Like, it's adversarial, and it's too adversarial. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to be on the same team. Yet the fact that there's sort of this old paradigm and old tools to support that old paradigm, yet there's a new paradigm. And that's what I think is creating this adversarial nature that we need to solve.
That's awesome. This is really good. So give us just general difference between, you kind of touched on it some, like your like strategic investment and FREEcon, right? Like we talked about, you mentioned things like in the very beginning, like, yeah, I'm grateful for the chance to like price this thing. I'll pump this out really quick. And at some point, you know, does it become this endless cycle, or is it actually adding value to the process? But like there's strategic investment and then there's FREEcon, right? So it seems to me like the strategic investment is like, you know, it's kind of in the relationship a bit. Like you get to know your client, they reach out, you say, hey, we want to get some pricing. Hey, we're going to be building a lot of these things over the next 2 years. You kind of probably get some data points, like it can become a strategic investment for the opportunity, right? But then at some point you're like, well, are we doing this thing or not? Right. And then that's where it can kind of shift to something not as enjoyable because we're not actually moving the needle. So kind of like give some like thoughts between that and the investment versus the FREEcon piece.
Yeah, well, you know, like I said, sort of there is a dollar value to the pre-construction activity that's required by all stakeholders to get the project to be viable, to break ground and go. That is a chunk of money, and it's borne by all the stakeholders, right? And so there's part of it of shrinking that burden down to a lower cost that's easier to digest. But there's also the proving your value and drawing that effort down, right? And if you prove that value, it's like, I want to work with Mike. So like, I'm just going to pick up the phone and call Mike. Like, that's what we want to do for our customers, is they get so good that people just want to pick up the phone and call our users. And then like the trust is there. They know they're going to get the transparency. They know they're going to understand why. Like a lot of the adversarial nature is, oh, hey, why is our cost per apartment so high? Well, you know, you have a lot of amenity space and your lobby has, you know, 5/4 inch marble on all the walls and it has to have a steel frame all around it, right? Maybe the architect loves that marble and you're like, that's why, you know, there's $2 million there. And the client goes, I don't think we should spend $2 million on that. And then, you know, now the architect's like, well, you know, that's something that's iconic for me. But like, you've got to point out that that's a cost driver. So now you can talk about, oh, maybe we'll use, you know, large format porcelain tiles made to look like Kalikata instead. And we can not have the steel in the wall, right? Like, that is now we're collaborating on a way that the architect gets what they want, the client gets what he wants, we get the money we get it to be financially viable. But if you don't even know why it's so dang expensive, price the plans, man, it is what it is. Like, like now the architect thinks you're a bad guy. Like, just everyone's now on each other's necks and hating each other. Like, already the architect's still upset that it's now porcelain instead of marble. Like, I get it, but there's compromise all around. And the way that it reduces the adversarial nature is through clarity, is through telling the story why. Then people know what they're getting and why it costs more. And you know what? Maybe I will pay $1 million more, but I get to decide what the million gives me, right?
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, you've got to put the work in, and maybe sometimes they're doing earlier work because there's, you know, maybe a longer term strategic opportunity that you're working through. But it's never a deal of like, I'm not going to do anything unless I get paid first, talking about this whole FREEcon and strategic investment versus free. But because that's not really how relationships will work. It's not how you're going to build trust with them. It's by being there and being able to answer those questions, build that cost narrative, build the story that's around there, not just, slap a number in front of their face. There's got to be a clear next step, in the process, a path to commitment, teams align, all that stuff, that goes into it. So, good stuff, Mike. That's great. I mean, I think, Trey, I don't want to run out of time with Mike here. I think maybe we should talk a little bit too about, a little more about technology's role in this. I mean, Mike, after all, is the CTO of Ediphi, and if owner just sees a spreadsheet or a final number, Mike, it maybe it is easy just to look at pre-con as a deliverable, but we've been building on on the show for the last 5 weeks now is this cost narrative, and it's not just a number at the bottom of the page. It's a story, how the number was built, what assumptions are baked into it, what changed from milestone to milestone, and right now most companies processes, we believe that lives in an estimator's head, or maybe broken apart across several different sheets on a shared drive. I mean, someone that's moved from estimating into building technology, how do you think software can help in that regard, making pre-con more visible?
Yeah, so I'll say this to preface it. Like, when I started my career, I immediately got into programming because there was so much monotony in construction. It was just like an interest to figure out ways to reduce the monotony. And I actually, before really getting into web technology, I was the pull Excel out of my cold dead hands guy. And, I had the Excel sheets that were magic. And, it wasn't just formulas. I figured out, first it was VBA and automation. Then it was like, oh, I know how to build COM add-ins and, distribute it so that it's built into your ribbon of your Excel. And I was all hooked up in Excel. And at least it got everyone finally on like the same templates. But then all of the limitations hit. It's like all the data is just dying on people's hard drives and file systems, and you can't aggregate it. And it's so fragile, like #ref anyone, like errors everywhere. I spent more time building guardrails on my Excel templates than I did building feature. And then you realize, like, okay, actually, and this is when in 2018, I asked for a budget to go, web-based, from the start, cloud first. And got my first budget to start building that, and had a team of people to work with me. It's like, you got to be in the cloud, because two things: you need to be able to aggregate your data. You need an API where you can aggregate all the data and you can get the insight. You need to be able to right click on a line and see what everyone else thought it was worth, our historical pricing window. Like, you need those things, and you need an ability for all the people who plan the built world to work in the same place for the first time. Right? That's the other big part of it. And so, it's not just that it's, oh, I've got a cloud database. It's like, you need a user interface where everyone can come in and work at the same time together. Right? And then these silos of, oh, only Mike knows what's going on in the estimate are broken down. And it's just, we're actually more collaboratively working together. And the transparencies throughout the stakeholder stack, owner and design team and contractor, even me with my ops guy, it's almost funny, some of the disconnects between an estimator and a PX. And so, like, you need to be cloud first to put people on this platform where everyone can work in a transparent and collaborative way. That to me is it is foundational. I don't see how you can do it any other way. And that was something that, red pilled me into diving super deep into web technologies back in 2018. And I don't regret any of it. It's been the best decision.
Yeah, you like pre-con's changed over time, right? I mean, even your 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
You could work in a spreadsheet, right? But we've almost propped up the spreadsheet too much. Like, it's initially it was we could build this thing here, put the guardrails around it, but it's been propped up so much now to where you got companies doing millions of dollars in business running all their mission critical revenue through a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and like I am still a spreadsheet junkie, right? Like, I used to, with real good customers, I would get their pro formas, right? And they would have me like review their performance. And man, there were some performance I would see that you change one number on one cell on sheet 52, and it's like, your IRR just went from like 10 to -2. It's like so sensitive.
Yeah.
So it's just so much risk if you go that route. And it's all been, look, we're a high risk, low reward business already. Like lucky to show 3% on a massive project where but people can die in construction. The risks are high, right? You need to mitigate that risk, that unnecessary risk.
Yeah, the problem isn't those 2-year cycles, or in your case, Mike, necessarily the 30-month one you talked about earlier in the show. It's but it's just it's overall, like, it's not that it's free, it's just the length of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And that the only way to fix it's really like a 3-sided maybe shift where the owners and design teams and everyone involved, engages earlier. They start having those real pricing conversations before the drawings, are anywhere near being complete. And, GCs have to adopt tools like Ediphi that, help them estimate in that programmatic fashion and, more towards that target value, the carry in historical cost, all that good stuff, the milestones, communicating early with owners, et cetera, et cetera. And I think everybody has to accept the relationship, between developer, designer, and builder. It needs to start at the beginning of the process. And I came from a little bit different side of estimating or working with contractors before. Ediphi was more of the self-perform guys I spent a lot of time with. And so when I kept hearing the owners and developers need to communicate, at the beginning, I was like, well, that doesn't really happen now. Or owners and GCs.
Contract. Yep.
Yeah, right. And I just assumed maybe that would be the first place they stop, but apparently, but it's not. And I think that's a messaging maybe that needs to get out even more into the owner market, to start that process earlier, not after they've got, a set of drawings that's landed in somebody's inbox, if you will. So, but before we let you go, we play a game, if you will, every week. We call it Fast Five, and we give you 5 questions, and it's just kind of rapid fire answers. You don't have to give a long answer for each one. They're kind of designed just to be little quick hitters, if you will. So, Trey, what do you think? Should we jump into that with Mike? Because I know we've got to let him get out of here.
All right. So, Mike, first question: biggest obstacle to compressing the pre-con timeline: owner behavior, GC process, design coordination, or tools?
I'd say tools, because it's a nasty cycle where everyone's blaming everyone else. And if they had better tools, which then fosters better process, the adversarial nature goes down and everything. Everyone's a little bit to blame and all blaming each other. They need a better home to do their work.
True or false? Most GCs already have enough historical data to support better early cost engagement. They just can't access it in a useful way.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think a pre-con is like a bunch of different pipes that are stuck together, right? And all your crown jewels are spilling all over the floor. All your data is spilling all over the floor. It's there. It's all sitting on the floor, right? Like if you just fix your pipe, then it's all going to flow through and you can use it. I mean, it's slipping through your fingers every day is what's happening,
Yeah. All right. What is the one thing owners could change tomorrow that would have the biggest impact on the pre-con timeline?
Realizing that you should do pre-construction and design concurrently, not one before the other. I mean, you could almost even argue for pre-con before design, right? It's when you do it the traditional way of I'm going to design it all and then talk to Mike and ruin my day. And then, spend another 2 months and just go through that cycle over and over again. Avoid that. Bring pre-construction professionals at the table early.
What is one thing you believed as an estimator that changed once you started building software for estimators?
I think there's more resistance than I was expecting, don't move my cheese, right? There's this hump to get everyone over where it's like, this is how I do it. This is how I've always done it. I don't care, and it's like, yeah, but look, just believe me, bro, believe me, just a little bit. If you try a little bit, there's so much payout on the other side. Right. Oh, yeah. And so trying to encourage everyone that this change has, there's gold at the end of this for you.
Yeah. Change management's very hard.
Change management's hard.
Yeah.
We have great quotes every week. I think "Don't move my cheese" is one that I'm going to add to the,
that's right.
To the list. So.
Well, that's like probably a 90s book or something, a classic kind of business book.
Okay. We're quoting it.
Yeah.
Finish this sentence. The estimate stops being just a number when blank.
When you recognize that every line item is interdependent to all the others, it is a pricing model, not an estimate. All the pieces are connected. And if you recognize that and you estimate in that way, you can delete a floor of a building and everything updates with a click, right? So it's no longer thinking of it as a bunch of line items that are flat, right? And we're the first solution that has more than just line items with floors and rooms and units. Respect what it actually is, a pricing model, not an estimate. That's the key.
Nice.
Well done. Well, Mike, we know you have to go. Trey and I have some wrap up here to do on our side, but we really thank you for coming on today. It was great. It went by way too fast.
Yeah.
I mean, so I felt like we're just getting started, but really, we appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I got to run to another demo. So, but thank you all. This was a great chat.
All
Awesome.
right,
Thanks, Mike. We'll talk to you later.
Well, that was awesome. I mean, that flew by way too fast. I felt like we left a lot on the table. There's things we could have talked about for another hour with him. I mean, he's just the depth that he has to bring to this conversation is unbelievable. So it was really great stuff.
Yeah, you go from "don't move my cheese," and then he finished that sentence, and it's like he just connected detailed cost estimating and conceptual estimating in one fell swoop.
One fell swoop. Oh, so I guess we could wrap it up a little bit with change in the industry. I mean, what's your take? I know we were maybe going to try to get Mike's take on what needs to change or can it change if we wanted to move away from, I hate to say it's completely unhealthy, but this unhealthy idea of FREEcon, right, that we've been talking about, where it just gets almost a little bit abused in the process. I mean, what do you think has to happen to help fix that and move that, towards a better direction?
I think it's initially just education, right? And part of literally one of the reasons that we are doing that this podcast exists is because we want to help educate and bring people who actually have different perspectives and educate. I'll give you a very real example. It happened yesterday morning. A buddy was telling me, "Trey, I thought about you the other day. I went to my son's, it was like a rehearsal or some kind of something where his kid was presenting. And I was looking around and it was a beautiful building. I was thinking to myself, I can't imagine what this thing costs. I bet the FREEcon had to be like crazy on it." And I'm like, he wouldn't have thought about that had you not tried to like simplify, like, folks were like, well, what do you do? Like, what is pre-construction, right?
Yeah.
But what stuck out to me was, he's like, "I thought about you. Here's why I thought about you. Here's what the thought was. It was related to pre-construction. I guarantee you, any time before that, he wouldn't have thought anything about it. So maybe it's because he listened to the proper pre-con song. Maybe he watched the podcast, or I don't know. But when you educate on, like, objectively on the challenges, and you can kind of rally people around some of those things, it's very fascinating to me that folks, even not in an industry, all of a sudden have some understanding of what that is. That's huge. That's how you're connecting with the audience and with the people.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, education, it's got to go a long way for sure. And I would love to have these conversations, especially more in the owner market, or even in the design circles and things like that, because I think that those are, the more we could talk through that with those parties, I mean, I think it'll just help facilitate earlier and better conversations early on. That the industry I think it just needs more clarity, right? It's not just this number. It's not just market knowledge. It's trade partner relationships. It's risk identification. It's all these things that you don't think about. I mean, like I said earlier to Mike, I didn't think about it. I didn't even know that wasn't the norm until I came to this, because I was so used to dealing with like concrete guys or MEP contractors, or even like a smaller GC. Not in the realm of some of the contractors we're talking to here at Ediphi, and it was things that is just different. So I mean, I think I've spent a lot of time in construction tech, and I wasn't aware. Because I can only imagine somebody outside of it, that doesn't have those, lessons learned or those conversations to pull from.
Yeah.
So I think it's excellent. It's an excellent point. It has to start with education. And so, I mean, I'll take it back even to episode 1 again, where you were telling this story. I think it was you were breaking down something related to the pre-con process, and how it actually looks like. You get 5 pieces of information at a lunch meeting with a napkin sketch, and then you go back to the office, and I think you said you pull a rabbit out of your hat. And based on whatever the cost data you have available, then you get a set of drawings and you start to price that. And then months later, you get another set of drawings, you start to price that. Then you scrap it. Then you start it over. And then you do it again when you get to DDs, and then maybe again 7, 8, 10 times on a project. And at every single one of those milestones, some of the context from the last iteration, it's getting lost, and the tool's not carrying it forward because it lived in somebody's head. And we're talking about FREEcon today. You're doing all of this under maybe some sort of verbal commitment or some goodwill that you may or may not get this project, but projects die if they don't pencil out, and so you've got this long timeline of things that started because not that started, you get this long timeline because the process started at a point that maybe it shouldn't have started at. It wasn't quite ready. It wasn't ready for a napkin sketch because the conversation there was in the wrong order of how it got to the napkin sketch.
Yeah, and I don't in the vein of FREEcon, there's no suggestion here of like we're not talking about this to say we should eliminate FREEcon. The reality is, you mentioned goodwill. Relationship and goodwill exist in FREEcon. That means you have a good relationship and you're a trusted advisor to someone as you and then you gradually build trust with them, right? So
yeah,
it's almost the idea is almost like right sizing what pre-con is, so it becomes less FREEcon and more actual pre-con like valued for what it provides, right? So not saying FREEcon shouldn't be a thing. That's totally fine. I mean, people call me and say, "Hey, can you do this thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, happy. I'll help you out. No problem." That's how people like work together.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fine.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. Even if you call an HVAC guy, they're going to come to your house and give you a free estimate. I mean, it's the way we do things. I mean, I don't know. You can't just start charging for estimates and I granted we talked about service agreements and things like that. I mean, there's a time and place for those things. I think it's just like it's more of that mindset shift, right? And to do it well, you can have those conversations. Say, hey, look, I want to help you out with this. There's a definitive level of effort that I'm going to have to put into this.
Yeah.
And I think if you can start having those conversations, it changes things instead of immediately jumping into some free labor, right? And I talked about subsidizing, the owner's decision. I think you're getting better aligned to work towards that decision that the owner needs to make. I mean, I talked about it just a couple of days ago. Like, owner wants to build a project, GC wants to build it.
Yeah.
So we get together to make that happen, but do it in a way that makes sense for everyone.
It's means and methods, right? Like we always talk about means and methods in construction. What are the means and methods? So we can build the thing. But we very rarely say the means and methods of pre-construction. But the reality is there are means and methods in pre-construction too. We pay people for means and methods in construction, but we don't always pay people for the means and methods in pre-con. And again, it's fine to do some things for free and build the relationship, but at some point, the means and methods, that's your expertise, helping guide the client towards the number that actually works for them. Is that worth something, right? And if you can do it a lot faster in 6 months or less instead of 3 years, is that worth something? Yeah, it's worth 2.5 years of time of material and labor going up.
That's great. I was going to ask you to sum it up, but I think that was a pretty good summation, if you will. I keep thinking about your people, process, and technology, and it really does work together. You can't have a great company, in my opinion, without all three. If you think about it, if you have people and no process, they're sort of wandering, right? If you have process and no people, that's a bigger problem, And if you don't have technology, you have the people and the process, but you don't have the technology to support it. You're doing work multiple times. It's just not efficient. So that three-headed or three-legged stool, if you will, whatever, it really does bring it all together for people. So
in the sequence and the order and all those things, like all of that's important.
not just always about producing better estimates. It's about making things efficient, better decisions earlier, things of that nature. So, all right. Well, thanks again for tuning in to Proper Pre-Con. Recon, where did that come from? Please remember to hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it on your socials. It really does help us out a lot on what we're trying to do here. We're going to be back next Friday with a new episode. I think we're going to be talking target value design, Trey, and I'm hoping we have another special guest that you've lined up for us, but we will see. Yep. Remember, Proper Pre-Con is powered by Ediphi. If you want to see what a proper pre-con tool looks like, check out ediphi.com. That's ediphi.com. We'll see you next week. Peace. We're out of here.
See ya.
Proper Pre-Con.